Well, it was quite horrendous. Historically, back in the late 70s, was if you can imagine, compared to now, that there was no black players playing in the Premiership, which was called the old First Division, and there was a culture or a mindset from coaches and managers that they thought black players, they couldn't handle the cold weather. They were fancy dans. They didn't have enough courage. They didn't think we were good players, basically, because of their mindset. So at West Bromwich Albion, when myself, Laurie Cunningham and Brendan Batson, there was three of us in one team back in 1977-78, and there was another black guy called Viv Anderson in Notts Forest. We were the only black players in the Premiership at the time, which was the old First Division. So you can imagine the racism that we had from teams like Millwall and West Ham and Chelsea. It was very abhorrent. Most of the fans were, one aspect is that we want to try to put you off because, you're different. But there was a larger aspect who were actual racists that wanted to hurt us and to stop us playing football and stop us doing our best. From the fans to the players, it's changed. I don't think you're going to ever change people's hearts. And that's where the real core of racism is, because, you can put laws, as many laws as you want. There's laws about stealing and murder, but people still do. So it's about changing people's hearts. You're never going to do that. But it has changed. In our day, we used to have, 5,000 to 10,000 people shouting racist abuse at us. And we used to have bananas on the pitch, a bullet for the post. But really nowadays, it's very, very rare. We've had 2 cases in the last 2-3 years of John Terry and Luis Suarez, and that's rare. And when it rears its ugly head, you've got a stamp on it, and that's what the authorities have been doing. But for me, the real catalyst of change is not so much which the clubs and Let's Kick It Out of Racism and authorities have done, all these different campaigns, but really the proliferation of black players in the league. It's very hard for a racist, for someone to call, racist chanting when you've got a black player on your own side. So the more black players there is, it's hard for someone on your own side. If not, like example, if you're at West Ham and you've got 3 players on your own side, it's very hard to shout racist abuse against West Brom. We've got 3 players. So in the end, it just quelled. From our point of view, it was confined to the stadium. If it affected our home life, our marriage, people throwing bricks through our door or going down Birmingham or London and we're intimidated and we're fighting, it's a totally different story. It was confined to the stadium, so we could handle it the best way we could. The best way how we handled it is we internalised that anger, because it made you angry. You internalise that anger and then we use it as motivation. Say, all right, I'm going to show you, I'm going to beat your team. I'm going to work harder, run harder, pull my socks up, go out there and beat your team, and that is our answer. Fantastic contribution. I think they're probably the most successful imports in this country. They give a totally different dynamic. You look at any team that, an Arsenal team, Man United, look at Newcastle right now. The black players coming over here, especially from Africa, has changed the dynamic in football. Because, they're strong, they're powerful, and one of the things they have is there's a hunger. They've got a hunger and a drive. I think it's because of their social conditions back home, that they come over here, they know that they're responsible for their family or their village, and they've got a hunger and a drive to be the best players they can be, so they can earn some serious money and help their villages and their family back home. So they have a real strong mindset to come here, to be successful, to pour back into their family, into their community and their country. Back in 1977-78, our drive, our individual drives, was to be the best players we can be. One of the hardest things to do is just stay in the football team, so you need to perform all the time. One of the strongest forces that drives football is competition for places. So we just focused on being the team, so our performances are consistent and high, so that we stay in the team. That's our focus. But looking back on years, looking back, the effect was, back in the 70s, we hardly saw any black players playing football. So the young players, the second generation, people like Ian Wright, John Barnes, those lads, the second generation, saw us playing football on the black and white TV or back then, and thought, if they can do it, I can do it. And that's the biggest shift in terms of inspiring second and third generation black players. Players nowadays don't have to go through what we went through because we've broken those barriers, but we inspire them. I mean, I come from an estate called Stonebridge, which is like nowadays a sink estate in London. Police never used to go there. I grew up from there. And so when they see someone like me or Laurie Cunningham, who came from Tottenham, and Brendan Batson came from Grenada as a young kid, come over here, and our lives is very similar to theirs, they're thinking, well, if they can do it, I can do it. So looking back, it inspired second and third generation of black boys to say, well, I can be footballers as well. So, we're held up as pioneers and role models, but our focus was just to stay in the team. So it's a ripple effect from what we done and how we handle it. I mean, it's very tough to handle that kind of racism with a sense of dignity. We didn't lash out, we didn't cry, we went right, we internalized it, we used it as motivation, and we handled it with dignity. Now, if we'd done how would I say, an Eric Cantona, and went over and smashed someone and kicked someone, the attitude is probably different. Oh, look at them, they can't handle it. Are typical, everything they handle is aggression. But the way we handle it was very central to the point that, we use it as motivation, and we showed that, we're good players, and that's where you should judge us. Nowadays, black players, I'm a football agent, and I talk to 15, 16, 17, 8-year-olds, they ain't got a clue about racism, which is great because they're judged on how good you are as a player, period. And that's how it should be. But every now and then you're going to find, like the John Terry situation and the Suarez situation, that human behaviour, what it is, it comes from the heart that racism is going to come out.